What if one forgotten science fiction movie didn't just inspire Hollywood, but secretly shaped the entire future of time travel cinema forever? Because behind the polished clocks, glowing machines, and futuristic worlds of the Time Machine, 1960 lies a production filled with hidden disasters, lost endings, cursed props, and secrets MGM never expected audiences to uncover. And some of them are honestly darker than the movie itself. When The Time Machine hit theaters in 1960, audiences had never seen anything like it. Science fiction existed before it, sure, but this film changed the game. It transformed time travel from a simple fantasy concept into something emotional, terrifying, and strangely believable. At the center of it all was George, played by Rod Taylor, a brilliant inventor who builds a machine capable of traveling across centuries. At first, it feels magical. Victorian London, elegant dinner parties, curiosity about the future. But the further George travels, the darker humanity becomes. The film was based on H.G. Wells's legendary 1895 novel, but bringing that story to life almost never happened. Hollywood studios thought the concept was too expensive, too weird, too risky. For years, director George Pal fought to make it happen, and during that struggle, the movie almost became something completely different. In the late 1950s, Japanese producer Shiro Kido approached George Pal with an idea that sounds unbelievable today: a Japanese-American co-production of The Time Machine. This was during the golden age of Japanese sci-fi, right in the middle of the Godzilla era. Imagine it: massive miniature cities, Toho-style practical effects, Japanese actors, entirely different creature designs. The movie we know today could have looked completely unrecognizable. But the deal collapsed. Studios backed away. Funding disappeared. For a while, the project looked dead. Then everything changed when George Pal traveled to England. There, he managed to convince MGM to give him a modest budget. Not a massive blockbuster budget, just enough to survive. And somehow, against all odds, he pulled it off. But behind the scenes, production was chaos. One of the movie's most famous scenes nearly became a complete disaster: the nuclear apocalypse sequence. The moment where molten lava swallows London whole. Today, the scene still looks impressive, but the truth behind it is almost disgusting. The special effects team needed fake lava on a tiny budget, so they created it using oatmeal dyed red and orange. Yes, oatmeal. Huge vats of it. But before filming began, Southern California was hit by a brutal heat wave. The oatmeal sat in the sun for days and started fermenting. By the time the crew returned, the fake lava smelled so horrible people could barely stand near it. It had become runny, rotten sludge, but they had no money to rebuild the set, no time for reshoots, so they filmed anyway. And unbelievably, that disgusting oatmeal helped win the film an Academy Award for Best Special Effects. But the deeper you look into The Time Machine, the stranger things get. Because hidden throughout the movie are secret connections to other science fiction universes. There's a scene where George explores a futuristic museum in the year 802-701. Most viewers focus on the glowing rings and futuristic designs. But sitting quietly in the background is something unexpected: a large acrylic sphere. And that sphere wasn't made for this movie at all. It was recycled from Forbidden Planet, the exact navigation globe used aboard the Sci-Fi 7D spaceship. Even the uniforms worn during the nuclear war scenes were repurposed costumes from Forbidden Planet. MGM simply reused old props to save money. But decades later, fans realized something wild. The future world of The Time Machine literally contains artifacts from another science fiction universe, and the connections don't stop there. Because one man helped shape both The Time Machine and Star Trek. His name was Wah Chung. He designed the terrifying Morlocks, their glowing eyes, their green skin, their underground world. But that's not what made him legendary. After the movie, Wah Chang moved into television. And there, he created some of the most iconic sci-fi props ever made. The original Star Trek communicator, the tricorder, even the Romulan warbird. Think about that for a second. The man who built one of cinema's most famous time machines also built the gadgets that defined science fiction television forever. But while the effects team was making history, the casting nearly fell apart. George Pal wanted a sophisticated, British gentleman for the lead role, someone older, intellectual, calm. Actors like James Mason were considered. The movie could have been a quiet philosophical drama. Instead, George Pal made a risky decision. He cast a young Australian actor named Rod Taylor. At the time, Taylor wasn't a huge movie star. This was his first major leading role. And that decision changed everything. Rod Taylor brought energy, aggression, emotion. He didn't feel like a professor observing history. He felt like a man fighting to survive it. And then there was Yvette Mimieux, the actress who played Weena. She had almost no acting experience. MGM didn't even want her in the movie. But George Pal saw something special in her, an innocence that felt almost unreal. There was just one problem. She lied about her age to get the role. She claimed she was 18. In reality, she was only 17. Technically, she wasn't even allowed to work full shooting hours, but the production kept going anyway. At first, Rod Taylor reportedly thought she was awkward and inexperienced. But during filming, she improved so dramatically that George Pal actually reshot some of her earlier scenes because her acting had become so much better by the end of production. And then came the Morlocks, the creatures that terrified audiences for generations. Most people assumed they were played by ordinary stunt actors. They weren't. Many of the Morlocks were actually professional wrestlers. The costumes were heavy, hot, difficult to see through, and Rod Taylor performed aggressive fight scenes with real force. The filmmakers needed performers tough enough to take punishment while practically blind inside rubber monster suits. That physical brutality gave the underground scenes a dangerous realism that still feels uncomfortable today, but one scene pushed things even further. The melting Morlock sequence. When a Morlock clings to the time machine, it rapidly decays across centuries in seconds. For 1960 audiences, it was shocking, disturbing, almost horrifying. And the effect was brutally simple. The crew built a wax Morlock dummy, then blasted it with intense heat while cameras rolled. As the wax melted, the footage was sped up to create the illusion of accelerated decomposition. The result looked horrifyingly real, but maybe the darkest secret in the entire movie isn't about the effects at all. It's about the story itself. Because there's a theory about the time machine that completely changes the way you see the ending. At first glance, the Morlocks seem evil. They live underground, they hunt the Eloi, they look monstrous. But if you pay attention closely, they're actually the only group still maintaining civilization. They operate machinery, maintain technology, organize systems, build infrastructure. Meanwhile, the Eloi barely think for themselves. They don't read. They don't ask questions. They don't even react when one of their own is in danger. According to this theory, the Eloi aren't a peaceful civilization. They're livestock. And George, blinded by his own Victorian morality, destroys the only functioning society left on Earth because he finds it ugly and terrifying. Suddenly, the movie becomes much darker. Maybe George didn't save humanity at all. Maybe he doomed it. And strangely enough, the original ending was even darker. In the film, George eventually returns home after defeating the Morlocks. But that's not how H.G. Wells wrote the story. Into the original novel, the time traveler journeys millions of years further into Earth's future. There, he witnesses the death of the planet itself. A red dying sun hangs over a frozen beach. The oceans are silent. The world is empty except for strange crab-like creatures crawling beneath fading light. Director George Pal desperately wanted to film this sequence. He later admitted he could vividly imagine Rod Taylor standing on that dead shoreline at the end of time itself. But the budget couldn't support it. So the sequence was abandoned forever. Or so people thought. Because George Pal spent the next 20 years trying to make a sequel. Again and again, he pitched scripts to MGM. Again and again, they rejected him. He wanted to finally show the dying Earth sequence he couldn't afford in But before it could happen, George Pal died in 1980. It looked like his vision would disappear forever. Then, 13 years later, something incredible happened. A small production reunited Rod Taylor and Alan Young decades after the original film. The project was called The Time Machine, The Journey Back. Rod Taylor even wore the exact same smoking jacket from the original movie, and unbelievably, it still fit him. The production also used the restored original time machine prop itself, a machine that had nearly vanished forever, because years earlier, the iconic prop had been discovered abandoned and rotting in a thrift store, forgotten, damaged, nearly destroyed. It was eventually restored by collectors who understood its importance to film history, but not every piece of the movie survived. In 1961, a devastating fire swept through George Pal's neighborhood. His home burned, and with it, priceless. Pieces of cinema history disappeared forever. Original miniatures, production materials. Even the small demonstration time machine used in the dinner party scene was destroyed.